Welcome to Recogs, the show where we learn how the world's best business operators build consumer brands from sourcing to selling, brought to you by Manufactured. Manufactured is an online platform that helps brands manufacture, finance, and distribute inventory across 20 industries and 25 countries. If you're a consumer brand owner or an operator and you're looking for inventory financing help or want to explore our manufacturing network to help reduce your COGS, check out manufactured.com. And if you're enjoying this podcast, if you've listened to a couple episodes and you're really liking it, highly recommend subscribing to it on whichever platform that you're listening on, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. And if you enjoy this episode, please give it a like. That really, really helps us a lot. So it's April 2024. That's when we release this episode, and it is our 1 year anniversary. And I'm delighted to welcome back our second time one-on-one podcast guest, Greg Shugar. I met Greg at Shop Talk last year when we recorded 4 straight episodes at Shop Talk to kick off Recogs. And it was great meeting Greg in person. For this one, this is a virtual episode. So Greg founded Tie Bar, which we focused on the last episode, and had a successful exit to private equity back in 2013. He then went on to start the Thread Experiment and also ended up buying Beau Ties of Vermont, which is a made in the USA 30-year-old bow tie, neckwear, and headwear brand. And we're going to focus this conversation on bow ties, but we're also going to talk a bit about what Greg is up to in addition to bow ties. Greg's also looking to purchase a brand. So we're going to talk a little bit about his criteria, why he thinks that this is a really good period to actually buy an e-commerce business, what categories are interesting or categories aren't interesting for him, and overall just the landscape of how he thinks about e-commerce moving forward. For example, once he buys a brand, does it make sense to actually grow the brand, or does it make sense to actually keep the brand stable and just churn out hopefully positive EBITDA? So without further ado, here's Greg. Greg, second time's a charm. How are you doing?
Good. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing great. Thanks again for being one of our first guests last year at Shop Talk. And now, as part of the 1 year anniversary, excited to have you back on. How was the rest of your Shop Talk, by the way, this year?
Shop Talk went very well. I met some very interesting vendors and already working with some of the technology companies on getting their technology installed on our website.
And that's for Beau Ties?
That's for Beau Ties of Vermont, yeah.
Cool. Give us, maybe to start with, are you able to give us like a bit of a status update with like Beau Ties of Vermont from like where you were all last year versus where you all are this year? Were there any pain points that you all had to experience at late 2023 or early 2024?
Yeah, I mean, my company is just such a weird one in the sense that it's a 30-year-old company. I bought it 5 years ago, right before COVID. COVID hits, all of a sudden men aren't going to the office. So men who are already not getting as dressed up as they used to be weren't buying as many ties as they used to. But now that got exponentially worse during COVID, of course. We had quickly pivoted to masks. We ended up becoming one of the largest mask companies in the country. We grew in size 7 or 8-fold. But what was interesting was for the first time we had really picked up female customers. So as the pandemic was coming to an end, the vaccine was out, we knew we had a whole new customer base who had only tried masks but were female for the first time. So as we came out of COVID, we were fortunate enough to get a lot of our male customers back, although not as many. But we also had women for the first time. So we played a lot with women's accessories. We introduced those for the first time. And we did our best to convert our female mask customers into Beau Ties of Vermont customers going forward, offering them women's accessories. So we're still working on that. We're doing a nice job converting. I just got some new numbers and we keep sort of converting them. It's amazing how many of these female mask customers stay on our email list. They open, they click through, and then sort of slowly start trying some of our women's accessories. Anyway, that's the excitement. And like I said, I mean, some men are coming back. Our men are the most loyal. They're incredible customers. We have a repeat customer base in the mid 40s right now. And we're super happy about it.
In terms of offering like new products, is it shifting right now in terms of offering more products that make sense for women versus men, or are you right now not even thinking about launching like new products?
No, we are definitely still a men's company, first and foremost. And it's not as much as that we're offering new products. So we definitely expanded. We got big into socks and boxer briefs, and those have actually done extremely well for us. But we're really trying to develop our design base much greater. So the old owners, I don't think focused enough on design, or at least the right designs. We now offer new designs every Tuesday. So we know our customers don't need more bow ties. We're trying to entice them every week with new stuff. So literally every Tuesday, we drop about two or three new designs, and our open rates have gone up. Our click-through rates have gone up. Every metric's gone up. Unsubscribes have gone down. I think if even if they're not buying, they love to look at the new stuff. They love to know what's there. And I think it's made our company a little more exciting in 2024 than we were last year.
That's awesome. And I mean, from like that standpoint, did you? I know that you all cut and sew yourselves. It's self manufacturing. Of course, you're buying the fabrics and everything, but it's self manufacturing from like that standpoint on the supply chain side. Did you when you took over the company? Did you feel like there was like a lack of designers since they weren't putting out maybe as new designs frequently? Is that something you all had to hire for as well, or did you already kind of have the team?
Yeah, they actually worked with an outside agency, what's called like a converter, who helps design for you. But you're also required to buy the fabric from them, and so as a result, all the costs go up. You pay a designer cost, you pay more on the fabric. I hire designers that we have that design our own designs, what we want, and then I go straight to the manufacturer, have them make it according to our specifications, and the costs go down considerably. So I was actually able to lower costs, and I'm even happier to tell you that we've never raised prices, even through this inflation that we've been going through the last 2 to 3 years. We have kept our prices, our retail prices, the same. And I'm not shy to call that out either. We let our customers know that we're not raising prices, and we're proud of that. And it was because I did so much cost cutting when I came in, because of my previous necktie background, my world of men's accessories. I was able to do all those things and cut so many costs that the previous owners weren't able to do.
How do you think right now for Beau Ties of Vermont, what's the relationship between retail and also e-commerce? Or is it primarily more so on the retail side? Is it primarily or primarily on the e-commerce side in terms of your business?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say most of our business is still direct to consumer. We do quite a bit of wholesale to smaller retailers, couple department stores, custom tailors. That business, we do a little bit of work on it. I did a trade show recently. I hadn't done a trade show in years. And we picked up some more stores that way. But the truth is, I think we grow through direct to consumer. We don't really do Amazon very much. We put some SKUs on there, but we don't work hard on developing it. I like to focus on direct to consumer. I always like controlling our messaging. I like having the customers to ourselves. But that's really what we're doing most. We do have a retail shop out in Middlebury, Vermont, but I'd be lying to tell you that there's a ton of traffic for neckwear in Middlebury, Vermont, for brick and mortar. It just happens to be in our building, and we built it out, and it looks nice, but we don't really have a ton of traffic there.
Got it. Got it. I mean, yeah, totally on the DC the D2C on the DDC channel, owning your marketing, owning as well, the presentation, even though it's virtually of your product offerings, that's and kind of owning like that entire flow, as well as obviously email marketing. That's pretty huge. Overall, where do you think about? I know that you said that when you bought the company in 2019, people obviously went to work. They went into the office. They had a reason. If they were in a particular profession, it was almost like a requirement that you actually had to wear ties and bow ties. Where do you now, since like the world is kind of obviously changed with COVID, even though people are coming back to the office, I feel like it's a lot more. It's become even a lot more casual world than it was. Where do you see it's headed in relation to like bow ties in terms of like the tie and bow tie category?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in this industry for 20 years. I've seen cycles. I saw spikes come up when Mad Men came around. I saw spikes when the skinny tie came around. So there, it happens. We all say it's cyclical, but I'll be honest, I'm a little fearful of where we're headed. Right now, a lot of our business is event driven. There's a lot more events. I feel people are a little bit more inclined to dress up at events because there's this separation of work and events. I feel like here's our chance to wear a necktie is what most men might be thinking. And so our event business has been excellent. And part of the way I measure that is by cummerbund sales. We sell cummerbunds and suspenders for formal events, and those sales have been going up. Probably without question, the two biggest categories of improvement are those, and I base that mostly on event-driven business. As far as men wearing it to the office, I'm an optimist, and I think it's going to happen again. I saw it happen before. The recession, believe it or not, in 2008 caused men to start getting dressed up again. Men were fearful of losing their job. There were a lot more people out of work, so they were buying new clothes for interviews. So there was a spike in neckwear soon after the recession, around 2009, 2012, 2013. And I'm not predicting a recession, but our economy's been spectacular for a while, and that can't last forever. So I think there's going to be coming a point where some of the power will go back to the employer, and they will start demanding employees come back into the office, which some have already done, and that will then move into possibly, hey, it's time to start getting dressed up again, at least when clients come in, certain customers come in, and that might start to work back. I think what happens is when some of these college grads get into the professional environment, they're like, you know what, I want to go to the office. I don't want to stay home. And when I go in, I'd like to get dressed up. I'd like to feel like I'm part of the productive society that I live in. And I think getting dressed up works with some of that. That's at least the way an optimist thinks, or a guy who owns a neckwear business.
Has it changed at all how you think about in terms of what your I know it's tough to say hero product maybe because you have a variety of different combinations and also kind of have a lot of different variety and there's a lot of different product selection. But when you think about like bow ties in like the future, does it kind of shift your thinking in terms of hey what product is going to be like our maybe most successful standout product in the future?
No, I mean, I do think that I mean, for 30 years, as mostly a bow tie company, I mean, we can't get away from that. And I think that's what we focus on. We're actually one of the few neckwear companies that designs bow tie first. Most design necktie first, and then they sort of make them into bow ties as well. We do the opposite. So I don't think that necessarily changes. I don't want to start developing, more casual clothing. The last thing this country needs is another casual or athleisure brand. We're flooded with them already. So, it's one of these things we're just going to hang out. I've watched a couple brands go under. I've watched a lot of brands start to develop less designs. And sort of not necessarily pull back. I mean, even you look at Brooks Brothers, or if you look at Joseph A. Bank, you'll see a lot less. Men's Warehouse, especially, a lot less dress clothing than we used to. And so we're just going to hang tight where we are. And when and if that time comes where men's tailored clothing starts coming back, we're going to be, I think, positioned well to be one of the leaders, which we were years ago, leaders in the neckwear brand. And we are now, again, for people who wear them, but for those who don't, which is right now too many people, not a lot of people know about us. But I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to let the competition sort of weed itself out. And when and if this comes back, we're going to be one of the few that are still standing.
Yeah, and I think to your point too, if people are getting dressed more for formal occasion, even if it's want to maybe dress up for formal occasions, if you're really gonna go like very very formal or what have you, it's typically like the bow tie, not the tie, right? And so in terms of like positioning, it seems like you're positioned well if that's the case.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, like at Shop Talk, it's funny. I mean, I saw a lot of guys this year wearing jackets, a lot of pocket squares, and quite a few guys wearing neckties. And I hadn't seen that in the past. And I think that's one of those examples of guys who are like, you know what, I'm going to set myself apart at this conference, and I'd like to take this a little bit more seriously than I might take a regular day at the office. And then we all had a bunch of meetings, and we were all working booths and stuff. And I really saw guys getting dressed up for the first time, really since COVID, in a conference trade show setting, at least like I used to see. So I felt maybe that's again where some of my optimism is coming from.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because it also, it also since it's you also don't wear these, you might not wear formal attire as often, you might get dressed up and say, okay, well now I'm going to also stand out too at this conference, since others might be in like sweatshirts, and casual clothes is also a good way to kind of set you apart too. Since also with Shop Top, it's in terms of like this world, it's a pretty casual world, so it's also a way to set you apart too. That you also might be thinking. So that's pretty interesting. I know. Okay, so I know that also, which I know was kind of one of the inspirations behind this conversation, that you're thinking about buying a company, and you kind of have investment partners as well, for it. Talk to me a little bit about how that came about in terms of you wanting to actually buy a company, and as well as some of the um as the size of the business. Let's start there in terms of that you're thinking about acquiring.
Yeah, I mean, so this started basically because I had this opportunity to buy a company to roll up into Beau Ties of Vermont. We got into some discussions, and sort of long story short, that deal never happened. In the meantime, I got in touch with somebody who I know closely, and she wants to be a part of a new business. She's in the corporate world, has been for years, and is sort of ready to spread her entrepreneur wings. So we agreed to partner together and start looking for a company to buy that wouldn't roll up into Beau Ties Vermont, because to try to do that, it's just much hard. It's already hard enough to find a good company. To try to find the right company that fits into as a roll up into Beau Ties would have been too challenging. So, yeah, we're looking at e-commerce. We think it's actually a good time to get out, because so many companies are failing and struggling. I think there are opportunities that we haven't seen in the last year or so. We're really sort of industry agnostic. Doesn't matter necessarily what the product is, but we're looking for a company that has some health and strength behind it. So we're looking for $5 to $7 million in revenue. Actually, the one that we're looking at closely now is beyond that. It's about around 11 million, and we're looking for at least $500,000 in SDE, so sellers discretionary earnings, and we'll go from there. That's really the low end, at least, of the profits. We want to find companies that have tried something. So there's sort of like two things I always see. I see companies that have tried something and failed, and companies that have not tried something at all. The latter, when they try something, not haven't tried anything at all, they look at it as an opportunity. They sell it to you and say, "Hey, we have never done TikTok advertising, so we're going to sell this business to you, and all you have to do is do TikTok ads, and you'll double the size of this company." I'm like, oh, really? Because if it's that easy, why didn't you do it? So that I always find that to be bullshit. But I like the other one, the former. I like when they've tried something and it failed, because then I like to look at what they did, and most of the time you could see where they've failed. And so this company we're looking at right now, we've looked at some of the stuff they've done where we think we can improve the company. I think that my skill set matches well with what they didn't do well. And I think that's always the best formula for buying a company. Look at a company because every company is going to have struggles unless you're buying a growth company, although most growth companies also have their own issues. But I look for companies that have their struggles, and whatever they struggle in happens to be my strength. And that's the company I like to buy. I mean, Bow Ties of Vermont's a great example. I had a great design team, um, uh, supply chain. I had factories for fabric. I had everything already in place, and this company did not. So I came in and very quickly fixed a lot of our cost structure on our products, and improved our COGS considerably on day one. I also have a pretty good digital marketing background. They were doing very little of it, and what they did was not successful. I looked at their digital ads, and you could see why it was a mess. You could see why their email marketing was a mess. To me, that was much better opportunity than, hey, we've never advertised on Google, so we have no idea how we'll do.
Right. That makes a lot of sense in terms of that you actually like to see what the company at least tried it and then failed, rather than and then seeing, okay, maybe here's the bottleneck, or here's how we can actually improve it in terms of what they didn't do, versus but they actually gave it a shot, because then they aren't kind of selling you BS, in hey, like, we haven't explored this one like social media channel, so you should try that, or we've not really like doubled down on email marketing, although I'm sure that probably every company you're looking at has doubled down on email marketing, or
You'd be surprised, man. You'd be surprised. We look at one company that has 2 emails a month. I'm like, are you kidding? You are missing out. And a pretty good, robust email list, and one with pretty good statistics too. But yeah, they sent them twice a month. They believe that less is more. And I get it. but I don't agree with it.
But I guess from your perspective, just because of what you've done with bow ties, it's also how can you get creative with your product in order to drive excitement and engagement rather than just sending out an email twice a month. That might look maybe very similar or like just have like an interesting offer. How can we actually create like new products in order to get actually the people who love our products to actually be excited again?
Yeah, I do think creating the right a good product is probably the most overlooked and taken for granted part of most of these e-commerce businesses. Because you could talk all the strategies you want in terms of customer acquisition. If you're creating a shitty product, they're not coming back a second time. Getting them the first time's easy. Well, maybe not easy, but you get them the first time, they're not coming back if your product sucks. So, yeah, I think, and again, actually, Beau Ties of Vermont, another great example. They were just not doing great in their product side. They were doing these sort of kitschy cotton designs, low quality, and they were a high luxury brand before that. And all of a sudden, they were getting into these cheap little cotton designs and stuff. And I was like, this is not the brand. So we fixed the product real quick. I'm fortunate because of my background neckwear, it was easier. But now that I'm sort of shopping for other businesses, I'm getting into some products that are a little beyond my knowledge. And so I don't really know when I'm looking at the product, is this good or not? Yeah, now fortunately my partner's pretty good. We looked at a beauty company and she was really good at like looking at the cream and she understood it very well. I don't know, I mean, she certainly didn't understand it as well as like a business owner or somebody who created their own brand, but as a consumer, she understood quite a bit. It was great because I offered nothing to the discussion. I know nothing about skincare. I just buy whatever they tell me makes me look younger, which obviously is not doing a great job.
No, it's doing a great job. It's doing a great job.
It is. That's true. I'm 78.
Yeah. See, you're doing a great job. Doing a great job. But well, I mean, to that point though, I know that you said that product has to be 100% great. On the bow tie story, it wasn't quite there when you were actually bought the business. So, do you actually look at some of these opportunities as what you actually have like a really good kind of more business fundamentals in terms of or the business is there in terms of that maybe at like the revenue threshold that you're looking for positive EBITDA or like or if it's a profitable business. However, product your product could be way better. Is that like an opportunity that you also look at, or does the product have to be good in order for you to all to even be involved? And part of your evaluation does sometimes happen when you look at these companies where you actually feel like they actually mess up the inventory, meaning they actually purchase too few of the, maybe hero product, and maybe all the actual inventory that they have on the balance sheet is actually like the products that actually maybe don't sell or don't sell nearly quickly enough that you can actually convert those into sales. Does that tend to happen or not really?
Well, the inventory problem that you see a lot, and it's happened a lot recently. I'm sure you've already heard about this. Is all that overbuying during COVID? It's amazing how many companies are digging out of that still. 2 years later, even Bow Ties Vermont, we have our own issues with that. So yeah, that's the biggest problem. And what's kind of funny is some of the companies that are selling now are looking to get a separate or an additional payment for their inventory. And I just don't buy into that. If you're selling an e-commerce company, you are selling your inventory as part of the company. It does not have its own separate price. It has no value on the separate market. If I don't buy it, where's it going? It's going in a landfill because I'm not letting you sell it. Right? You're going to have a non-compete. You can't sell it. And so what's happening is a lot of these companies are like, well, we have 2 million of inventory. You got to pay us something for that. I'm like, no, you're the idiot who's been carrying $2 million of inventory. That's your fault. And I'm not paying you extra for it. By the way, I'm an idiot too. I overbought as well, but I also know that like you can't sell an e-commerce company and say, well, but it doesn't come with the inventory. Well, then what's the e-commerce company? It's not even it's got very little value if it doesn't come with the inventory. And again, since the inventory doesn't have really any market value when it's not connected, it's nothing. Now, I might pay something for, let's say, the next 3 to 6 months of inventory. I'll put a little value on that, but that's about it. And so anyway, that's yeah. So the problems you really see often are the overbuying that happened during COVID. And again, so many companies are still digging out from it. In fact, almost everyone I've talked to has the same problems. By the way, the other part of like I underbuy, and it sells really well, and I don't buy enough of them, and so when they sell out too quickly, I mean, you got to get control of your supply chain and your order inventory, your ordering process. We have something where we can get fabric made and delivered to us in 10 days. So if we make that mistake of underbuying fabric for a popular design, 10 days later it's in.
Got it. Well, how then when you're breaking down these companies, how are you thinking about do you prefer companies that actually do their own manufacturing, so you actually do have more control when it comes to supply chain, or do you not mind working with like a contract manufacturer in that sense?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would ever buy another manufacturer. They come with some of their own issues beyond being a direct consumer retailer. And I don't know that that's always the best thing. I kind of like our setup right now. We have so much control. So in other words, we'll buy, 20 yards of fabric, and until someone orders something, we don't really make anything. So it really kind of actually helps us with our cost of goods, keep the prices low because we haven't done the labor to make anything until it's ordered. And it allows us to offer so many different products. We offer like 13 or 14 products in a certain fabric, but nothing's made yet. So I don't have to buy the inventory for those 14 products. I just have the fabric, and when it's ordered, we make it. Having said that, so to answer your question, yeah, I like working with contract manufacturers. It's just a lot easier. But I do think whatever business you buy needs to have a very good relationship with its suppliers and its manufacturers, and that those can be very fragile. There are stories I've seen them over the years of factories just closing up shop without any notice, and all of a sudden you're screwed, or a price hike goes up that's not sustainable to keep the retail price that you have. I've heard just horror stories of supply chains just gone wrong. And so you need to make sure that that's in place, that it's been going on for a long time, and for the most part, there was a personal relationship between the previous owner and the manufacturer. That's been a big thing that I've preached all my life professionally, and I do think that that's something you want to buy into too if you're buying a business.
Totally. I mean, or even like the other example that I've talked to like a head of supply chain at like an e-commerce aggregator, or former supply head of supply chain at an e-commerce aggregator, that he was saying that that what also could happen is the manufacturer will just start selling your product. And there might be nothing that you can actually do that you actually do about it. So that certainly is.
Yeah, and so when you've had a relationship for a long time, they won't do that to you. There's no way. But yeah, new manufacturers for sure could do that crap. Open up an Amazon shop. I mean, all these Amazon shops opening up from China, it's scary.
Yeah,
Can't compete with
because
it.
I mean, it'll take like 2 or 3 years to actually just kick them off, and then in that time, then they can open up new ones.
Actually, they're allowed to be on there. I mean, yeah, they are. And now shipping's gotten so great. You could ship from China and get it to your doorstep in 3 to 5 days for these single items. And so, yeah, these Amazon these companies are opening up these Amazon shops, shipping, getting it to you in 3 to 5 days, and they're selling it to you. I mean, a fraction of the price. So the one reason we're barely on Amazon is because the average bow tie price is $10.50. Ours are $48. They're made in America. They're high quality. They're silk. They're not polyester. But yeah, that's what we're dealing with is a bunch of factories who completely depress the price. We can't compete. It's not even worth it.
With Amazon, when you think about companies to acquire, will that be it? Will that bother you if if the majority of the sales come from Amazon, for example, versus D2C?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of FBA. It's not my strength. That's probably what it is more than anything. I do think there are good FBA companies out there, these Amazon companies. I think there are buyers for them who come with that background. Um, in terms of selling on Amazon and understanding the strategies that you need to employ in order to become a strong Amazon brand or to keep your brand going well. But that's not necessarily my strength, and so I don't. And I just have a fear. You don't own the customer, and Amazon could in one day take your shop down. They could replicate your product. They could bring on a new seller who gets aggressive in sponsored ads. The next thing you know, you're gone. And so all that stuff kind of that scares me, which is a big reason why you see the multiples for FBA Amazon companies much lower than a DTC company. I mean, they typically trade in the 1.5 to 2.5 space at
What
best.
are what are D2C companies right now trading at?
To me, the biggest variable is revenue. I mean, it changes. Like I think sub 1 or 2 million. I mean, it's trading at like two maybe, and then if you get to like 2 to 5 million, you start to see two. 2.5, maybe three on the high end. And from 5 to 10, you'll start to see 3.5 and maybe four if it's growth. The trajectory is certainly going to matter too on determining the multiple. But I mean, when I sold Thai Bar 11 years ago in 2013, our multiple was 9.5. In a
Wow,
much different world.
wow. That's amazing. Can you talk to me a little bit about, like, I know we talked a little about like metrics that you're going for from like a financial perspective, from a as well from like a gross margin perspective, for example, to work on D2C, what is what does the company need to be at least in order for you to find, attractive or interesting, and also maybe from like a CAC perspective as well on marketing costs. Like, we'd love to kind of hear how you're breaking that down when it comes to what types of businesses actually you actually want to acquire.
Yeah. So for cost of goods, like I'm looking for margins of 60 to 70%, and anything closer to 50 starts to scare me a little bit. As far as what was
CAC,
the
yeah.
second question? Oh, the market. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't want to see the marketing expense be greater than 25% of revenues. And again, some of that depends on what repeat customer rates are, and the history of the marketing, where like what the trend or the trajectory is on the spend. So if the marketing spend's going down, it's returning now better results than it used to, I'm okay with something that's 25%, right? So if it used to be 30, but now they're getting just as much revenue on 25, it's going in the right direction. And I might be okay with that. But as an operator of a company, I would hate to ever spend more than 25%. Even that number gets me scared. I don't, 20 is probably the right number. But that also depends on the size of the company. It depends on whether or not it's a consumable or a repeat customer business, what the lifetime value. I mean, all these things have to come into play. If it's a one-time item, the 25% number is a little scarier than if it's a repeat business, a repeat customer business. So um, I hate saying it depends, but it depends.
This is probably a dumb question, but is the goal after you buy one of these companies to actually grow the company, or is it to actually remain it at like the same kind of like level when it comes to revenue wise, and as long as it's kind of profitable, and your operating costs are low, or as a percentage of revenue or what have you, that you actually, it just is like a nice, business to actually have.
So I'm a weird guy to ask that question to. I had a conversation with Fan By recently, right? One of your previous guests, Fan. And I asked him some advice on something, and he paused and he said, "There's two ways I can answer this. I can answer it the right way, or I can answer it the way for Greg Sugar. Because my situation is sort of different. Like, I've already had the exit, and I'm still, at least in my mind, too young to just go away. So I like to hang around the basket. I still like to I like to be part of the action, but I don't need the exit anymore, right? On the other hand, growing a business is the reward of success, of hard work. So when I talk about like I like just having a business. You're always trying to grow. If you're not trying to grow, you're going to end up shrinking. Um, and so, like, yeah, I mean, growing is like when your company is growing, you're like, wow, I'm doing something right. I also tend to think that if it's sort of staying where it is, it's not a failure either, because so much of the world's changing around us. There's just more competition, costs are going up. So in some ways, with everything working against you, with so much headwind against you, if you're doing the same, in some ways you can almost argue that you're succeeding, at least right now in e-commerce. But of course, the goal is always to grow. But I'm not like, this isn't like, I've always hated people who said, I'm going to build this company up in 5 years and then sell it, get it ready for an exit. I'll grow it and exit. I don't, the goal should just be to build a strong company, and you try to grow it the best you can, the most you can, but you still need to enjoy life, and you can't be looking at the exit. What is it? Enjoy the journey, whatever the destination, not the journey. I forgot the stupid saying, but the point is, yeah, enjoy yourself, right? You own the company, enjoy that part of running a company. It's actually, if you're an entrepreneur, it's actually really fun and interesting. And if all you're thinking about is the exit and like, how do we prepare for our exit? You're going to take your eye off the ball, and you might be going for the wrong things. I mean, there was this time, I don't know, 5, 7 years ago where DTC companies were like, yeah, all we got to do is build the top line. And in the meantime, their profits were going down considerably. Well, that ended up not paying off for them when they wanted to exit. And more importantly, they're probably stressed out over the profit levels. I just operate the company like you should, which is you should be focused on profits. Bow Ties of Vermont's revenue is down considerably from the day I bought it. And meanwhile, its profits are up quite a bit. It was a turnaround company. So I'm happy. I'm super happy, even though our revenue's down, because we're making money. I mean, not a ton, but we're making some money. So to me, that's a much better success story than just building the top line.
No, that makes sense. I mean, in terms of also like what you're focused on, which it seems like everyone in this market as well is focused on in terms of profitability, rather than top line revenue, which maybe like 10 years ago we were all focused on like top line revenue when it comes to e-commerce brands. I know you mentioned that you're pretty much category agnostic in terms of like what you actually look at and you're interested in. Are there any categories you actually want to stay away from? I'd imagine athleisure wear maybe might be one of the categories that you stay away from just based off of what you said previously. But is there any type of category that you don't want to enter in, and why?
I guess I really hadn't thought about that. I was having a conversation recently with someone about like how awful it would be to be in the appliance business. Not that there's a lot of appliance businesses for sale, but like once you sell a washer and dryer, you're going to see that person again for like the next 10 years. I did have a business in the home bedding world. And so like even that, like, you buy your sheets, maybe you buy a couple set of sheets for your bed. And I don't know, are you coming back anytime soon? Depends, I guess, on how many bedrooms and where you are in life. But we were targeting like millennials and people who are living in apartments in big cities. And so those guys aren't coming back very often. So I don't really love the type of business where you may not see them again, at least for a while. So it's not so much a category specifically, but I just, what's the point of building an email customer base if they're not going to buy from you again because they don't need you again, at least for a while? This doesn't really mean anything anymore.
Yeah, no, that's kind of a great point in terms of like, companies where you can actually do repeat. Then you can also get more creative with on like the email marketing campaigns, for example, that you feel like you can ping them more often if it is a product that people want to, that people actually have a use to actually come back and buy again. So that makes a ton of sense. I think I think I asked you this the last time around, but I'm going to ask you it again. What would you? It's our closing question on this show. What would you value more, $100 of COGS or $100 cash?
Yeah, $100 cash for sure, because you could just put it on like red or black and then turn it into 200 and then do it again. It's 400. No, I don't know. What's no, I mean cash, right? I think cash is always yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I guess cash. I don't.
I would have said COGS just because if you have any type of margin and if the product is selling, then you then it's worth more than $100 cash. Again, you also there's probably no product that probably just sells itself naturally. There's probably our marketing costs associated with it, so you're probably spending a little bit on marketing. But if you have decent margins, then hopefully you can turn that $100 of COGS into more than $100 of cash.
I think you're right. I just answered fast because I didn't want you to have dead air on your podcasts. So I think you're right. $100 a Cox is the right answer.
I know you're good. Greg, this has been so much fun. Thanks again for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And there you have it. It was a pleasure chatting with Greg. Greg, thanks again for coming on this podcast, not once, but twice. If you enjoyed this show, please hit that subscribe button on whichever platform that you're listening on. And if you're listening on YouTube, please hit like on this episode. Thanks for listening.